again by Benning. Darnell Nurse left it in the corner, gets up center. Pairings scores! Corey Pairings!
Lilia able to shake away from Solani. It's given away to Solani. Around in front. Score! Teemu Solani with the steal.
And the fans want one. Score! On the floor! On the board! Paul Kariya!
All right, we're back. Last show before the break, I guess. Oh, maybe not, but last set of games before the break here, and somehow the Ducks have rattled off their first back-to-back wins since November 1st. It's been that long since the Ducks have been able to rattle off 2 straight wins. And surprisingly enough, they did it in a back-to-back scenario.
That was crazy. I think we called that completely wrong. I think we both said, I'm surprised. If we get one somehow point out of any of this, we'd be more than amazed. So we suck at predicting right now.
Well, we were looking at that Carolina game thinking Carolina's probably the tougher opponent right now, but the Ducks and the Hurricanes were both going in on back-to-back, so it could be a bit of an easier game, but you still have to go into Carolina, which is a tough place to play. And then we also kind of said the same thing about Nashville always being a tough place to play this year, even though the Predators aren't playing as well as they usually are during the regular season. But the Ducks got UC Saros, and that seemed to be the difference maker in this game. He didn't have a strong performance. The Ducks played pretty well. I don't say they controlled the play, but they kind of did what they had to do. John Gibson made some key saves throughout the game. I think at one point he robbed Nick Bonino like 3 times on the same play. So it was kind of a good team win, and I guess the big cliche here, full 60-minute hockey game for the Ducks, which is I absolutely hate that cliche. I hate that reference, but I've already heard it a few times in interviews from the players, and I'm pretty sure Dallas Eakins has mentioned it already after that game and after both of these games, so maybe it has some merit. But the Ducks ended up escaping that one with a 4-2 win. How'd you feel about that game?
I liked it. I mean, they finally showed that cohesiveness where it just kind of seemed to kind of work on the offensive side, defensive side, and they just kind of kept plugging away. And I also hate that cliche, just keep plugging away, shift by shift, and we'll do it, that sort of deal. But it had the feel of kind of what I was hoping for throughout the entire season. It wasn't overly dominating, but it was enough to win. It was, very few mistakes and a lot more of that offensive kind of jump and capitalizing on some of those offensive chances where it seems like we've gotten those chances in a lot of games and just we don't do anything with it. It felt like we kind of capitalized when we had those opportunities. So I was much happier with this game, and it kind of just sucks. It feels like it's like, oh, we started to do good. All right, well, hey, all-star, and then shortly after that you'll take a week off. It's like everything you're kind of finally getting fine-tuned, but we're going to put a whole break on that for a second.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those games where you look at what went right in this game, and it's something we really haven't seen from the Ducks too much. I'm laughing at something in the chat here. Somebody said something about playoffs here, and I just that old college football interview just kind of goes up my head like that TSN hit where he goes, playoffs? You're talking about playoffs?
Oh, yeah.
That was just running through my head. But, it's one of those games where Dallas Eakins was obviously clearly upset. I think the last one of the articles we talked about in the last podcast was some of the more angry quotes we've seen from Dallas Eakins in his time with the Ducks so far. And obviously we talked about Bob Murray and how he wasn't happy with the play. And of course the players aren't happy the way the Ducks have been playing. But this was a bit of a shake-up game. We saw Getzlaf with Raquel and Sprong, which is something we haven't seen. Jones still with Steele and Kasha, because surprisingly enough, that line's actually been pretty decent so far. We saw DeLeo get his first start of the season playing with Henrique and Silfverberg, and then obviously Derek Grant, along with Silfverberg, returns to the lineup and retains his fourth-line center role. And then the most interesting switch-up, I think, was on defense because Lindholm and Manson were starting to find their footing again, and Fowler and Goodbranson were arguably the Ducks' best pairing this year. And all of a sudden, now it's Lindholm and Goodbranson and Fowler and Manson that get put together, and it was split the way things turned out in terms of who played well and who didn't. Lindholm and Goodbranson struggled. I don't want to say heavily, but they definitely struggled in this game. But Fowler and Manson looked excellent. And I feel like this is something we've seen this before. This was 2 seasons ago now where Fowler and Manson were just infinitely put together, and it was Lindholm, I think, and Montour, or I can't remember who Lindholm was with. I think Montour was out or hurt or something at that point. But it was Fowler and Manson that were just like put together constantly, and it just was not working. And I'm pretty sure I wrote an article about that, about how bad Cam Fowler had been doing that year, but how much more he was kind of dragged down by Josh Manson's play. I know it's only 2 games, but they've looked good. They've actually looked pretty decent.
Who knew it wasn't really that Josh Manson was really bringing Cam Fowler down? It was just the Carlisle system that was bringing everyone down. But I mean, it's weird. Like, Cam Fowler's kind of like the same thing as like when you had Corey Perry and Ryan Getzlaf. It's like these 2 guys have talent. You just got to find someone to just play along with them, and it should work out. And it's always, they can never really find that. They can never find that other winger that just consistently worked. And it's the same thing with Fowler. It's like it works in spurts, and it works then, and then things kind of fall out, and things don't work, and then they do. I like it. I mean, I like that. If we can put Manson anywhere, because he's a top 4 D-man, in my opinion, he just has not found his way this season. It's been a struggle for him. But if he can find some way to work with, if it's not Lindholm, then if he can work with Fowler, that's two great defensemen that can work. And then Lindholm is usually good on his own, and bring somebody else in and kind of work it all out. So it's a shakeup. It's something that, at this point, had to happen. What else are you going to do? Just continue on down the path you've been going and just hope that all of a sudden it starts working? Or maybe shake it up, see if there's something else changes. And, maybe this style works a little bit better now this year than it did in the past seasons for Fowler and Manson.
Yeah, I could definitely see it. I think they were sheltered a bit more in the fact that Lindholm and Goodbranson were getting the lion's share of defensive zone starts, and they were out there against the top line for the Predators and the Hurricanes. So you kind of expect their numbers to be a bit down, and Fowler all year this year, even with Goodbranson, is being put in position to succeed, where he's been given those offensive zone starts. And I don't want to say he's been sheltered, but he hasn't been given those hard minutes that he was last year and that he was the year before that. So that's a reason why Fowler's done so well, and you would think Manson being able to take benefit of that as well. That is kind of an area where Manson can succeed, is when the team isn't playing well. If you're trying to throw him out there in tough situations and against the opposing team's best players, that's a tough role for Josh Manson. We've seen him succeed in that role with Hampus Lindholm when the Ducks were good, but the moment the Ducks turned to a team that was struggling to get points, was struggling to beat some of the best teams in the league, that pairing of Lindholm and Manson hasn't been as good. And I don't want to put that all on Josh Manson, but it kind of feels like that's been a big shift for him. Is the moment this team wasn't competitive, Josh Manson really struggled to kind of live up to the standards that we'd put on him.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, too, maybe if he doesn't have necessarily the same offensive support that he had in the past, and then without that offensive support, he's relied on a little bit to kind of just do it on his own, and maybe he's not at that level or that caliber that we maybe thought that he was doing with Lindholm. But when a team is a little bit better offensively, and you don't have to consistently see wave after wave hitting you, then maybe you kind of relax a little bit better. You start playing a little bit better defensively, and you don't have to worry so much about the mistakes. So I wonder if that's also a possibility of why Manson's the last couple of seasons has struggled a little bit, even with different styles or different coaches.
One thing we hadn't seen from Manson all year was him getting up in the rush and being a threat to score, and he ends up getting a goal in this game. What was a great pass from Andre Kasha. Let's not kind of bury that under the rug there. he threaded the needle through about 3 Predators players to get that across to Josh Manson. But what I'm impressed with, honestly, is the fact that Josh Manson actually got himself in that position.
Did it? Yeah,
right?
in position and finished.
Yeah, he got himself in position, kind of
Yeah.
bobbled the pass a bit, but he got enough on the shot where I think Saros still got a piece of it, but it found its way into the back of the net. Honestly, I don't expect Josh Manson to always get in those positions, but when you remember back to when Josh Manson was playing, at his peak, when we thought, he was putting up 30-plus points and was a guy that, we didn't think would be able to put up points, but he just reliably was either scoring goals or picking up secondary assists here or there. He was a guy who occasionally would get up in the rush, and he'd get up on a play like that and be open and be that kind of fourth guy, that fourth forward into the zone. And we're seeing it. Again, it's 1 game, 2 games that we're kind of seeing this from Josh Manson. Hopefully it's a bit of a turnaround for him. It worked with Fowler being put in that position where you're given a bit more of a break in terms of your defensive responsibilities, and you're getting those offensive zone starts. You get a bit more freedom to do things offensively. Maybe that works for Josh Manson. Maybe that is the best place to put him in.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because it's almost like you would think Josh Manson would be that guy who's like, hey, Fowler's going to be the guy who's going to get in that rush. He's the offensive talent from the back end. You need to back him up. So if it doesn't work out, you're the guy back. So to have him, go from when he was playing with Lindholm, and Lindholm's kind of the guy who also plays a similar Manson style in that he's more defensively responsible and not so inclined offensively. So it's kind of weird that all of a sudden he goes and plays on Fowler's line, and now he's given more of a chance to be offensive. It's weird. I mean, if it works, it works. Could
backfire if they're both doing that, right? Like,
exactly.
They
both take the wrong step at the wrong time. Like, oh yeah, Lindholm would have had that, or oh yeah, my other guy would have had that.
Which is a bit of what we saw when they were paired together the first time. Obviously a different system under Randy Carlyle, and they weren't given that freedom to get up, but they were caught on occasion both trying to get into the play, and hopefully we don't see a repeat of that, because it would be nice to. I mean, we had found some semblance of consistency with Lindholm and Manson and Fowler and Goodbranson, and just because things looked good in underlying numbers and we seemed to have 2 good pairings, the Ducks still weren't winning games. Not to say that all of a sudden switching 2 guys around is the reason the Ducks won these last 2 games. There's a lot of things that go into it, but if this works and both Lindholm and Goodbranson can find some chemistry, and Fowler and Manson can keep things going, then why not try it out? Why not give it a shot? And then at least you have 2 different options, and you can kind of swap things around. If something isn't working, you can go back to what was working before. It is a nice kind of different option to have depending on who you're going against. The problem is, in both games, Larson and Holzer were not great. So yes, the Ducks have 2 pairings that they can kind of swap things around, and those will work. But as we've seen all season, Jakob Larson and Korbinian Holzer were paired together in both these games, and they struggled. So you've got some good there with two pairings working out, but then you've got some bad there in the fact that that Larson and Holzer and really whoever you throw in that bottom pairing this year just has not worked out.
Yeah, I mean I feel that's gonna be the struggle for the rest of the year. I don't see them doing anything where they're going to bring in a significantly great 5 or 6 defensemen that's going to kind of change that. So it's just rotating wheel, get them in there. Hopefully they don't make enough mistakes that cost you too much. Focus on those top 4. My opinion, it's great. Goodbranson and Goodbranson and Lindholm are there, but ultimately, I think Brunson's probably on the way out, and so it's just get what we can take for the time being. Get to the off season and start looking at or the trade deadline and try and see what we can get and kind of move away from this. This season's kind of tough on defense. I don't think there's a real quick or easy solution that's going to be solved this season at least.
You notice how they took Josh Maher out of this mess pretty early? I mean, you could argue he was...
Why would you want to keep him in it?
Yeah, I mean, you could argue he was... I don't think it's a hard argument to make that he was better than Jakob Larson, better than Holzer, better than Michael Del Zotto, better than those 3 options that you have for that bottom pairing. but why anchor him with Holzer or Larson or Del Zotto this year when play him in San Diego, play him top pairing minutes down there, and get his confidence up, and then hopefully next year, if you have a better guy to put him with down there, you can give him some more opportunities, or you can maybe move him up into a top 4 position. But I think a lot of people were getting on Dallas Eakins and Bob Murray for having him down there when he looked so good, and even I was kind of on that wagon a bit too. But it does make sense to not expose probably the Ducks' most talented defense prospect right now to a situation like that where you have to play with those guys and get exposed on a nightly basis.
Yeah, and you tend to get bad tendencies. That's a bad way to say it, but you can get bad tendencies if night in and night out. It's just like you're almost realized like, hey, don't screw up. We cannot afford to screw up. And if you screw up once, and then it like builds on you a little bit, and then you kind of just take it with you into every game, every practice, that sort of deal. And at this point, the Ducks are going to lose games. They're not going to run a clinic the rest of the way. So
not going to pull a St. Louis Blues and go from worst to first.
Yeah, I think we're getting a new coach and a brand new rookie goalie who's all of a sudden going to light it up. So at this point, what harm is it doing to have them down there learning? Play it right. Let's do this. If you can excel at this, then you're ready for that next step come next season. It's not a good situation to come in right now and get bad tendencies and get frustrated. It's just you're young enough. You got enough ahead of you. You'll have plenty of NHL games. Let's not rush into this right now. And defensemen take a little bit longer anyways.
Are you sure the Ducks aren't a Gerard Gallant and Anthony Stolarz away from winning a Stanley Cup? You're telling me there's no chance that Gerard Gallant and Anthony Stolarz can lead us to the promised land?
I am torn on this because I would really like to see what Gallant could do. It would just be mostly awkward to say, "Hey, Dallas, yeah, that hot chick just came in, and I know I committed to you, but she's looking really good right now. So I'm going to just ask you to kind of move out while I bring her in." It reeks of just, and I don't think the Ducks are going to do that. And I think Bob Murray's made that commitment to Eakins. Like, listen, this season is not going to be the season, but we're going to build, and we're going to build with the guys that you were doing well in down there. I don't think. Look at any coach that's come in. Like all the coaches that have been replaced, no team is really killing it. I think DeBoer has done all right, but I don't think he even said he's
for him, man. Like
and he literally said, I didn't do anything. I just showed up and they knew what to do. So
played
he
Ottawa,
pretty much said it.
They played Ottawa, and I'm not sure who else they played, but it's not like they had some super tough competition.
Yeah.
And honestly, like I can get it. I can get the interest in Gerard Gallant, like what he's done with the Vegas Golden Knights for sure, and even what he did with Florida beforehand. Yeah. Like,
is there anyone who's been dismissed so disrespectfully over the last two? Yeah. Like, I mean, the other one, he had to like catch a cab and get out of Carolina because his team was going to go play somewhere else, and he had to leave because he's off the team. And then this one is like, oh hey, you're in a playoff spot, but you're out.
You're 2 points.
And we're gonna go
the Pacific Division lead, and you took us to a Stanley Cup final in your first year. You got
second year. You got gypped, and the guy who gypped you, who you call a coward, but yeah, we're hiring that guy. Stupid.
I get it, and I understand it, but like honestly, the disrespect of Dallas Eakins when Gerard Gallant got fired was kind of unreal, because most of the people and most of where it was coming from were people who openly supported Dallas Eakins to get hired in the first place. And yeah, I understand that Gerard Gallant wasn't available at that time, but we all knew this was not going to be a team that was going to be like super competitive this year. I mean, borderline playoff team at the most optimistic of fan would have probably said that. So to say that Dallas Eakins should get fired for being 5 games under 500, 7 games under 500.
That's where it stings.
Yeah. That's a bit tough.
Yeah, it's like I don't want him fired. I just want him to move over so Gerard Gallant can come in and coach.
You just need like an alternate timeline where you can
okay.
at least see what would happen if if
All
Gerard
right,
Gallant took
we'll just
over.
keep you there one more season, and then I know what's going to happen. Or just like, hey, you want to be an assistant for like the rest of the season, and then we can bring
So we
this
can just
guy
test
in.
this out. If it doesn't work, we'll call in my cab and you can you can jump back
I,
in.
mean, I feel like that's what everyone wants because like no one really just wants to see Dallas Eakins leave because I don't think anyone's like really like blaming all of this on him, but it was just like, oh, could really use that Gallant magic right now. That'd be sweet, but
If
it is
the
what
Ducks
it
were in a
is.
different position where they were maybe supposed to be better this year, I could
Or
see
still
it.
Randy Carlisle or something. It's
Yeah,
like,
well,
peace
yeah,
out.
even that. Like, but you just hired this guy. He's been around the organization with the Gulls for a long time now, and it would be such a harsh fire
Yeah,
to get rid of him at this point.
you hitched your wagon to that horse and you stick with it too. So I mean, if you make a commitment to them, I mean, and especially Dallas Eakins, I mean, that would just be such a raw deal. Just
Yeah.
what he had to go through at Edmonton, what he had to do to work his way back up to where he is, and even getting into this situation, it'd be you'd be a giant douche to just say a piece, So someone slow, someone a little bit better came along and we were just everything we told you is a lie. So get out. It's a bad feeling, bad taste in your mouth. So
Whatever team gets Gerard Gallant's going to be happy. You would have to think. I don't know who it's going to be, and he'll probably take his time and pick a situation that works for him and his family.
He's got to
but
put in that clause there. I cannot be disrespected while fired.
if you're Nashville right now, like how disappointed are you that you made that decision like so
Just a
fast
little too
after,
early.
and you got John Hines, and you could have had Gerard Gallant. Like I feel like if Gerard Gallant was available, Nashville probably would have picked him up right away. Like that's the perfect situation I think for him to go into if you're thinking where could he turn a team around that was supposed to be better than they are and make a push for a Stanley Cup. Nashville is probably that team that he could have gone to and turn things around. Like if you look at like maybe the other teams that are right around that area that could fire a coach and bring him in. There really aren't any. Like Toronto already did that. Philly's not going to do that. You would have to think, maybe Montreal, but I don't think they're good enough. And then in the West, like Winnipeg's not going to fire their coach, and then Nashville really just kind of is that team where we thought they would be better. They probably have a better roster than the position that they're at, 11th in the West, and if he had a went there, I think that would have been the best opportunity for him to succeed. Maybe he goes and switches places and goes to San Jose. I don't even know.
That's what I was saying. Like, if he really wants
They-
to stick it to management over there, the GM, just like, I'll go over to San Jose, and then I'll beat you guys.
Who is in San Jose? I don't remember who replaced Pete DeBoer.
I do not recall either.
That was
Nor do I.
early on in the year, so they got
Yeah. Well, it's been like
You
seven
can't do
coaches
it
or something that
twice.
have been fired,
Yeah,
right,
7.
this season?
7, which is nuts. I don't
That's
think I've
insane.
seen that type of turnover.
A third of the
before.
coaches, like, no.
Halfway through the season. Like, I think at this point we're getting close to the point where I don't see many other coaches getting fired. Like before the deadline, I can't see like maybe one more, but after that I couldn't.
No, Calgary coach got
They
fired.
already got rid of him. That's what I mean. Like it's literally like a quarter of the league has fired their coaches this year, which is
You got a 1 in 3 chance of naming a team, and that coach has been fired.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to a couple notes from these games. Derek Grant returned in the game against Nashville, picked up a shorthanded
Elite
goal.
center number 1, Grant.
I mean, he is probably the Ducks' most dangerous
Killing it,
shorthanded
man.
threat. We haven't seen a guy be that dangerous on the penalty kill since maybe Andrew Cogliano. I know Derek Grant isn't as fast, but he always seems to find his way in that position. And in this case, he gets a breakaway, makes a nice move to just kind of sauce it backhand through Sorrow's legs. And, overall effort in this game, I think it was a great effort from the Ducks. The 2 goals that went in on John Gibson were tough. An Arvidsson deflection from a point shot by Yossi, and then just a seeing eye shot that just got underneath the bar by Mikael Granlund. Like not too much Gibby could do on. I mean, definitely the deflection, there's nothing you can do, and that shot by Granlund had to be perfect to beat him over the shoulder there. So, great goaltending, which is what we're hoping to see from John Gibson for the rest of the year, and an overall, team effort. You get a shorty, you get a power play goal, you get a couple goals 5-on-5, you get a goal from a defenseman and Josh Manson. So, you kind of take that and run, and they head into this game against the Hurricanes, and back-to-backs are always tough. Ryan Miller gets the start, back-to-back for both teams, but the Hurricanes at home. And the Ducks played a great game, probably a better game than they did in Nashville. They outpossessed the Hurricanes, which is a tough thing to do. They are one of the better possession teams in the league. They outshot them 37-26. Really never in doubt, other than the fact that James Reimer just had a great game. Like he just wasn't excellent, but he made 36 saves in this one, or I guess 35 because the OT winner by Sam Steele. But an impressive second game of a back-to-back outing, which is something we haven't been able to say for the Ducks in a while.
Yeah, and another deflection goal to start against Miller. So, if you look at like the 3 goals that the Ducks have given up in the last 2 games, literally there's not much that you're going to do to be able to defend that in any way that's going to change the outcome. And there's no way a goaltender is going to be able. You just hope it hits you at that point if you get a deflection like that. So at that point, I mean, that's sound defense, and one thing they've been missing all season is the offense to kind of back it up. So, even Brunson scoring goals in this one. Josh Manson gets one. Brunson, oh, really? Okay.
Brunson,
all right, here I go.
He had to have scored that one because that play by Ryan Getzlaf to not only beat out, I don't know if it was going to be an icing, but he his forecheck and his commitment on that play to get down there, get to the puck first, then to fight off a guy, wrap it around the boards, and then just send this no-look bullet pass across to Goodbranson, who's pinching up on the play. Like you have to score that one. If you don't score that one, you get chewed out. In the I don't care that you're like a stay-at-home defenseman. Like you have to score that one, and he completely fools James Reimer. I mean, I don't blame Reimer because when you got a guy like Goodbranson coming in on you, you don't have a book on this guy. Like you have no idea what this guy is gonna do, and he probably thinks he's gonna go high or he's gonna shoot it into the chest or something, and it's literally just like doesn't even come off the ice. It's just a straight shot 5-hole on the ice. And he just had no idea. Like that was the last thing you could see that Reimer was thinking was going to come at him.
Yeah, as a goalie, I watched that shot and how Reimer reacted. The thing was Brunson got so wide open, and it's so much time. And at that point, as a goalie, you're like, all right, I'm in position. And I'm like, all right, where's this guy going with it? But he's still kind of moving, so you're almost you can't quite get fully set. And then when it's a Brunson-like shooter. No super disrespect there, but it's not an elite shooter. Yeah. And then they shoot it, and it just stays on the ground, and you're like, really? It's just like the second it releases, and you see it's not going anywhere besides the ice, and you're mid shuffle or something. You're just like, I'm screwed unless I just click my heels and something magical happens. And sure enough, he tries it. It still goes in. He rolls over, and you could just tell. I just felt I'm like, oh, I've been there. It's just when it's not a good shooter and they get that wide open, you're kind of guessing. You're just using what you're used to, and when that happens, you're just like, that's embarrassing.
I don't know, obviously, but I feel like it's got to be almost as hard as coming in and having a book on a guy. Like you have a book on usually on a very good player, so you have an idea of what their tendencies are, but then you're also kind of second guessing yourself because they could make the move, or if Silfverberg or Raquel comes in on James Reimer there, you kind of have an idea of what these guys might do, but they have other they're so creative, they have other weapons in their arsenal. They could go backhand, they could beat you high glove, they could try and make a move and go 5-hole, and then you've got a guy like Goodbranson. You don't know the release. It's kind of difficult to read the release because you probably haven't seen too many shots from this guy. You've got a guy that you have has 3 or 4 goals on the season. He's a defenseman. You don't really know what he's going to do. So you just, again, in both cases, you're kind of guessing, but I feel like it's got to be almost just as hard as having a guy that you have no idea what he's going to do versus a guy you see a lot, and the skill level is obviously higher.
If that was Raquel or Silfverberg going in there, I think Reimer has a better understanding of what's about to happen than he did with Goodbranson. And that just means if literally Goodbranson got it and Goodbranson showed shot. So the whole way Reimer knows it should be a shot. This should go somewhere. And he messes up. Now if it's Raquel or Silfverberg and they get it and they show shoot same way he did, and they don't look like they're going to make a deke to the middle or anything like that, it's going to be a shot. It's going to go into lower, like this half, like somewhere where your arms or block or your chest can get into it. Very rarely are they going to be in that position and then flub a shot that never leaves the ice and just goes 5-hole on you. So in that one instance, I would say it's even more difficult with a guy who doesn't have the skill or you don't have a book on. Where it's like, you can just kind of tell, like the quicker guys, they're going to look up high. They're going to try and get it over your pads. They're going to do something else. They're not going to do a slow shot 5-hole. It just hits a few things and then happens to get in. So it's rough, but every shot's a little bit different. Every situation's a little bit different. So sometimes it's even more difficult with a horrible shooter.
Yep, and then so this game ends up going to OT. And Sam Steele ends up being the OT hero in this one. Silfverberg and Lindholm force a turnover. They feed Sam Steele for the breakaway. He pulls off kind of the Silfverberg type move. We've seen Silfverberg kind of patent on these types of breakaways where it doesn't necessarily fake a backhand or a deke or anything. He just calls his bluff. He kind of shows shot, and then he outweights the goalie, waits till he's got enough space to make the shot, and then just kind of floats it over blocker side into the net. And we've seen Silfverberg do that so often. What's kind of more impressive about Silfverberg doing is generally he's doing it glove side on a goaltender, and Steele's kind of got that left shot where he can go over blocker. But nice to see him get on the board. Nice to see the Ducks actually win a game in OT too.
Back-to-back games.
Yeah, and obviously, like we said, first back-to-back win since November 1st. As much as we're kind of on board with, we want the Ducks to get a high pick, it does feel nice to have 2 wins going into the break.
That's why I can never get full on board with a tank. And when everyone says, tank, or, this draft's going to be so great and we can get so many, it's like, yeah, that's fine. And if we get it, awesome. But I don't want to see my team not pull out wins. If they can pull out wins, and at the end of the season, it turns out that they were the bottom 5 in teams and they get a bottom 5 pick, fine. I don't want to see the lack of effort for it or full tank, who cares? Just don't try. Just let's tank and get a high draft pick. It's like, just try. All any fans want is just try, make it, give us your all. And if you get some wins, great. And ultimately, if you're not that good of a team, you'll find your way to the bottom anyways. So.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention beforehand, before both of these games, Comtois and Lindstrom got sent down to San Diego. I feel like that was probably a good move. Not that they were playing necessarily bad, but both of them, you could kind of feel that they needed some more time in the AHL. For both of them, this is their first season in general. They're both rookies this year, played a very minimal amount of time with the Ducks. Comtois played just under 30 games this year. I believe Lindstrom's played 30 games in his entire NHL career now. So these are guys that could use some more seasoning. And then, of course, after these 2 games, Jones, Sprong, and DeLeo were all sent down. I felt like those were more moves because
get them
the
to
Ducks
play.
Yeah,
playing for a while.
And that's something I completely forgot when I tweeted out before. I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." Then I was like, "Oh, wait, the Ducks are on a 7-day break, so it makes sense." Yeah, it makes sense to send these guys that are waiver exempt down to get some playing time, and obviously, Jones and Sprong are guys you would expect to potentially be back up after this break ends, because Sprong was playing on the top line with Getzlaf and Raquel and was looking pretty decent, and that Steele, Kasha, and Jones line was actually starting to do some good things in both of those games. So I would expect both of them back up, but I would think with Richie likely coming back, the Leo probably stays down, and Comtois and Lindstrom I think are down there until somebody is injured or until they show that they're ready to come back up.
Yeah, and they need it. They're, and it's not really a slight when I say this. It's just a little over their head right now. Like they're not quite at that level, and they need a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more time. They come in and they're a little bit in over their head, and then they can't quite catch up to what's going on right now. At that NHL level, and that takes time. And it's like I said, it's tough because everyone just has that expectation of, oh, these guys are so highly touted. We drafted them high. These guys should really jump in. And not everyone's going to be a Pettersson. No one's going to be Connor McDavid whoever else just jumps in all of a sudden has success. That's so few and far in between. So sometimes I think we put a little bit too much of that expectation, and especially with this season when we knew we were going to have a lot of younger players in, that everyone was kind of maybe expecting kind of chip in and do a little bit more. But on average, that doesn't happen. It takes a little bit more time in the AHL. So I think it's a good spot for them to stay right now for the exact same reasons. I mean, if they were contributing heavily and this team is all of a sudden like beyond a fringe playoff team, then maybe you keep them. But at this point, what's the point of keeping them up?
Well, we spent the last podcast heavily talking about trades. And as much as I hate these types of rumors and these types of sources, it provides some good talking points and good topics on the show here. So I'm sure, I don't know if you guys may have never heard of this guy's name. If you have, you probably know the reason why I'm not too high on this possible rumor. But Jimmy Murphy of Boston Hockey Now, the guy who infamously, I think 2 or 3 years ago, said that the Ducks were on the verge of trading Hampus Lindholm. So, and
was that the same dude? There was some dude that said like, dude, this is your last chance to call it right.
Oh, that was a different guy. That was
different guy. Okay. All right.
That was definitely a different guy. It was like another Michael Walters on Twitter or something. So
that was it.
But yeah, I believe Jimmy Murphy is the guy a few seasons ago who called Lindholm being traded, which he said he would like basically bet his house on it, and that didn't end up happening. And people got on him, but he's like, well, like I can't predict everything's happening, and it was a huge thing. But anyway, he has said that the Ducks and the Bruins, who we've heard before this year, are heavily scouting each other. And again, all that stuff kind of gets blown over the closer you get to the trade deadline, is who's scouting who, and none of it really ever means anything. But he also mentions that Dave Nonis, who's kind of I don't know how to explain it, but he's kind of the main guy right now for like road scouting for the Ducks. They had put it in their article.
NHL scouting? Is he like like head NHL scout?
He's the special assignment scout for the Ducks. So he gets sent specifically.
He's like secret agent man.
Yeah,
special assignments.
I feel like it's just a job title given to him, because at one point he was like consultant to the GM or something, right? Like he was just a guy that kind of stuck around. Now he's a special
like Jafar
assignment.
was to the Sultan.
Yeah, it's pretty much that. He is now special assignment
royal advisor,
apparently, and he's been seen routinely at Bruins games, which is also prefaced with the fact that he lives near that area, so that almost probably means nothing.
Maybe he wants to watch good hockey.
Who knows? But he has also apparently been to some of these games along with other members of the Ducks hockey operations department, which again could be nothing, but is at least an interesting topic to kind of talk about. And apparently the Bruins have interest in Raquel and Kasha because of their contracts, which I'm sure multiple teams, not just the Boston Bruins, do, especially teams like the Bruins who are up against the cap. And also the fact that the Ducks are willing to take on salary, and that's been kind of broadcast by Bob Murray over the last week or so. And
they just sent down Backus, so they're still kind of on the hook with some of his
too. That was mentioned too, how Backus getting sent down gives them a bit of cap relief, and looks, maybe prefaces the fact that they are trying to make a move. Maybe there's a fit there. I could see it. I mean, this is one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference, probably a team who's willing to give up a first-round pick. They've done it before. I was sure they would do it again if it was to bring in a player like that. You'd have to think if it was one of Raquel or Kasha, it'd warrant a lot more than just a first-round pick, especially Rickard Raquel. Late first is basically, a second-round pick at this point, and I would love the Ducks to get another first, but you would have to hope they would bring in more than Rickard Raquel. And then you get in one of those tricky positions where teams who, like Boston, have been good for so long, their prospect pool isn't necessarily great. So you're kind of going, I think their top prospect right now, depending on who you ask, is probably Jack Studnicka in the AHL, and he's predicted as like a third-line center, maybe high-end, if he hits his ceiling, a second-line center, which is kind of what the Ducks have in Sam Steele right now. So if that's their top prospect, you're looking down the list there and saying, well, there's not too much to pick from. And
Boston's flaky too. Like Boston management, like they'll sometimes we'll trade a guy because we don't like him. They did that with Sagan.
Yeah.
Just because they didn't like him, they didn't like his attitude. And so I'm wondering, like, I mean, from a Ducks perspective, if you're giving up a Silfverberg or Raquel, not only would you want their first, but I mean, there's a possibility you get a McAvoy, a Krug, something in there where they don't all of a sudden feel like that person's going to really fit in their culture, as
Yeah.
Pat loves to hear.
We
You
talked
know, I
about
mean,
McAvoy a few podcasts ago
yeah.
as a possibility, and we got
It was a
kind of
little, it
gripped
was a
for
little
that.
rough at that point to consider it, and I still don't think Boston would, but Krug they might be willing to kind of part with. It just depends if that's kind of what the Ducks were really looking for. Because I think, in my opinion, the Ducks are looking for a top four defenseman, and they don't really have it, and they're using a Brunson at this point, but that I don't feel is going to last forever. So
Yeah, and it could be one of two things. It could be both. It could be the Ducks are willing to take on a big salary from the Bruins, so the Bruins can go look elsewhere to bring in a player, or it could be, they're making a deal without bringing on salary. They're just trying to trade a guy who has a lower cap hit in Andre Kasha or Rickard Rakell and just get assets, or it could be a mix of both, where they're taking on salary and also giving up one of those players to get a bigger pool of assets. It could be any one of those. It
so
could be
crazy.
nothing. But it is interesting to see, because I think there could be a fit there. I definitely think there could be an Eastern Conference team. You're more maybe willing to give up a player like Rickard Rakell or Andre Cash or Jakob Silfverberg to a team
You
like
don't
the
see him
Boston
that
Bruins.
often.
Yeah, you don't see him that often.
They can't hurt you too much.
Yeah, and in the future, if it ever came into a playoffs, you wouldn't see them till the Stanley Cup final. So the odds are low that it would really have a blowback on the Ducks. It all just depends on what you get. And I think any of those, it starts with getting that late first-round pick and having another one in what's supposed to be a deep draft. The Bruins have some interesting, albeit not great right-handed shot prospects that you could at least add to the system. Guys who maybe have an outside shot at the NHL, or guys who could be a 5 or 6, 4 on the high side in Axel Anderson and Victor Berglund. Like, there's a chance there. They're both Swedish. There's a connection there. Like, you can start pushing these things.
You're pulling here. You're pulling.
You can start pushing these things to make sense, and they start to make maybe more sense than they do. I could go through a list of all 29 other teams and kind of make a case
find something,
of a way a trade would work for
30
the Ducks.
teams.
So.
There are 30 other teams besides the Ducks, sir.
But it definitely is interesting, at least a little bit, that Nonis has been here routinely, and he's been there with other hockey operations department from the Ducks, or Ducks staff in the hockey operations department. This has kind of been a rumor that's been going around all season, that the Ducks and Bruins have at least had interest and have been scouting each other. So maybe we see something happen. It would be nice to see the Ducks, like I said, pick up some young assets and another first-round pick. It just all depends on what they have to give up. I don't know personally if I'm ready to give up on a player like Rickard Rakell or Andre Kasha. I think, Silfverberg, I'd be willing to, but then if you're the Bruins, you can't do that without giving salary back. So there's a lot of moving parts to try and get something done.
I'm so confused why you're so willing to move Silfverberg and so hesitant on Kasha. I would absolutely.
I'm not necessarily hesitant on Kasha. It's more so Rickard Rakell.
Yeah, and I would say that too, but I would also say Silfverberg, I'm more hesitant. Kasha, I feel, once again, he hasn't been injured as much this year. It hasn't been concussions, and that was my biggest fear going into this season. Is like, if we can offload this guy and get something, because I feel like this guy is just one quick rush up against the boards away from just a career-ending hit. It's just, I'm more apt to want to move him just out of fear of injury. And at this point, he hasn't really produced, so I guess his value is a little bit lower. But I hesitate to move Silfverberg because I've always thought he's had that offensive ability, and it's been stifled by him having to play more of a shutdown role. So I'm always hesitant to get rid of Silfverberg. Raquel, I still waiting for that little thing to click in him too, and I think Kosh is probably the easiest one for me to want to get rid of, and I think we could still get a decent return on him because he's such a we call it the advanced stats darling. So
yeah, that's the thing for me, is if you can get something good for Andre Kasha, sure, but I feel like most likely you're selling low on Andre Kasha, and there's still that chance that he turns this this around, maybe this year or next year or the year after that, where he's still young enough that you'll be able to get assets for him at a higher level if you want to trade him, or he could be a valuable piece to this team. I feel like he's more of a project that you can wait on and try and see if you can get back to that point, and then maybe the value goes up if you do want to trade him. I would just be wary of selling low on a player like Ondrej Kase, because there is that chance that it blows back in your face in a big way, because if he does become the player we think he could be, and some people do think he could be, in a 25-30 goal scorer, and you don't get that value back in return, that's a huge loss for the Ducks. They can't afford to sell low right now, and the reason I'm more apt to selling Jakob Silfverberg now is because his value is probably never going to be higher than it is now. And he's 29, and the chances of him being this valuable and this effective down the road for a team, even if the Ducks are competitive, is less likely. When he gets to 32 and 33 and 34 near the end of his contract, that's going to be tough for him to be this effective, especially the way he plays the game. So we'll see. I mean, I could definitely be wrong, but that's why I'm a bit more open to selling Jakob Silfverberg than I am Ondrej Kase.
Well, you're wrong, but next topic.
Well, next topic we have, because it has, other than the games, it's kind of been a slow week in Ducks news. And I know it's only been 4 days since the last podcast, but in terms of running topics we have, that's pretty much it. But we do have some fan questions that we have to get to. So let's jump in those here. David Roska on Instagram said, "Who should the Ducks get in a trade?" A little vague, because it could
that was it. That was the whole question.
That's it. So, I mean, in a perfect world, everybody knows
Ovechkin.
Player. Well, yes, sure.
Yeah,
but,
McDavid.
I mean,
yeah.
The player, one of the players I've always wanted on this team is Thomas Tatar, and but it's just right now the Ducks aren't in a position to give up assets and picks for a player that's basically Jakob Silfverberg in terms of age and production wise. And obviously Tatar has been a lot better this year. He's, I think, over 40 points, almost a point per game. But you're just not in the position to go out and acquire a player like that and give up young prospects or young assets or picks to where the Ducks are in the draft right now, or where they are in the standings.
Yeah, exactly. Where they're at, they're not a team that's going to be bringing on a good talent. They're looking to move assets at best and then bring in prospects. There's no one they're going to go out and grab. I mean, the only reason you go out and grab,
who should they trade instead of who should they get in a trade?
Yeah,
like who should they trade to get picks and prospects? Because right now, the Ducks shouldn't be looking to add players; they should be looking to sell players. Yeah,
and I'm not saying sell the farm or anything like that, but one or two players that maybe are fringe, or the management has kind of decided is like, all right, we're just not going to move forward with this guy. Like we've had enough, and it's not there, and so we're sour on it. We'll move it to the side, that sort of deal. So yeah, they're not going to bring anyone. They never do anyway. So whoever they trade for is never a game breaker. It's who can we buy for $1 million or trade a 7th round pick for something? Oh, got you somebody. That's pretty much what they do.
All right, Shredden37 has got an NHL question for us. He said, will Ovechkin be able to break Gretzky's career goal-scoring record? Just so everybody knows where it stands right now.
After this weekend?
Yeah, Gretzky's at 894, which is 93 more than Gordie Howe for the lead of all time. Ovi jumped into the top 10, leapfrogged Mario Lemieux for 692. He's in a tie with Yzerman and 2 behind Mark Messier for number 8. Does he get past 894? And Ovi, how old is Ovi now? He's 34?
34, 35, somewhere in there. My easy answer, yes. This guy will definitely be number 2. There's no doubt in my mind, because he's this close to 700, and literally he's this old, and he's still putting up hat tricks after hat tricks. Steve's putting up like 40 or 50 goals every season. Put 30 and do it for like another 5 years. It's 150 goals from where he's at, and he's almost at 700. That's 850. I'm lowballing just, hey, do 30 for 5 years because I know he'll probably play for another 5 years.
Yeah, well,
Bar
he's
an
got
injury,
more
and he
than
could be
he's going to score
40 in
this
1
year,
year,
right?
50 in another year. I mean, it just kind of keeps building on itself. So I know he wants to do it, and at this point, he's pretty much done everything else he needs to do. He's won the Stanley Cup. He's obviously I'd got to say the most lethal goal scorer ever. No one can score like he has. Now, McDavid might at some point become that lethal goal scorer, but I mean, he's an overall just amazing talent. But Ovechkin just scores goals, and he's done it in bad eras for goal scoring, and he's done it in great eras. It doesn't matter. He's done it old, he's done it young, he's done it middle age. The dude's a beast. There's almost no way he doesn't there's no way he doesn't get second, in my opinion, barring injury. And I can easily see him going over 900 goals in his career. I think he can do that.
900 it's tough because you don't want to bet against Ovi. The fact, he's 34. He'll be
Everyone
35
else has.
he'll be 35 to start next season, and he should have over 700 goals at that point. Only needs 8 more this year to hit it. He'll probably get about 15 more goals to finish this year and finish the season around close to 50, 45 to 50, which is insane for a guy his age.
You laughed when you said it.
Yeah, and let's just say he hits that 15. So then he's at, 707? So he's, about 190 back.
2 or 3 seasons away from being second all time.
And we'll say, if he plays 5 more seasons, his last season would be his 39-year-old season, which would mean at the end of that year he would be 40 in that year's September. If he hit 30 every year, he'd have 150, so he would fall just a bit short, I think. He'd fall a bit short. He'd be 850, so he'd be about 40 back. But you got to give Ovi credit. I mean, next year could he hit 40, 45, 50? Probably. The year after that, the next 2 years, I would say he could probably still hit 40 to 50 because of he hasn't really shown any signs of slowing down.
And they re-signed Kuznetsov is setup guy. They still got Carlson who sets him up on the power play.
Backstrom will be there presumably for the rest of Ovi's career
now.
Yeah. And Kuznetsov again. Kuznetsov's actually been the guy who's been playing on 5-on-5 with Ovechkin, and they've found
Wilson,
chemistry as well.
He's helping out. He does.
There's a chance. I think it's going to be really hard.
I just know the closer we get to it, like if we get to that 880s, like there's got to be a suicide watch for Don Cherry. I mean, if he's still alive, someone's got to be around him at all times.
What if he finishes with an 888? Like, is that still satisfying for you because it's number 8?
Yeah, like your OCD. No, it still bothers me to this day that Gretzky couldn't play one more season, get 6 more goals, and just hit 900. It's like 894. You stopped. You could have got 6 more.
if he does it, if Ovi beats it, it's in less games, I think. Then. Well, maybe not. No,
probably not less games.
I was going to say it's in less games than Gretzky, but it's close. I mean, he's 350 games back of Gretzky, and what's that, 4.5 seasons? Like, he'd be close because we're saying he plays 5 more full 82-game seasons. Like, he would almost do it in the same amount of games played as Gretzky, which is unreal. Like, which is just unheard of. I mean, the only couple guys to have more goals per game than Ovi or Lemieux and Bossy and maybe a few other guys. But,
now, as a Canadian, how would you feel having a Russian be the all-time goal scorer?
I'd be fine with it. I hope Ovi does it, honestly.
I kind of do too.
We all know.
I was go ahead.
No, so we all know probably over a full healthy career of all time, if Mario Lemieux played as many games as Gretzky, he'd probably be 950, maybe 1,000 goals at the rate that Mario Lemieux was scoring goals at. Maybe we wouldn't be talking about this, but nonetheless, it doesn't defeat the fact that Ovi could do it. Like the fact we're even talking that he could beat 894.
That was almost inconceivable. Like just. Like 3 or 4 years ago, it's like as great as Ovechkin is, he'll slow down. Everyone slows down, and this game's getting too fast for everybody. No one thought like 894 was ever attainable. Like, it was just insane to even think about it.
If he finishes, let's
That's
say,
so
after
fun.
5 years, he beats it. He's at 898 to end his 39-year-old season. He has to come back.
Stop saying 890.
No, I'm
I'm
just saying, I'm 897, whatever, 898, 897, 896, whatever. He beats it, but
gotta
he's
get
that
9.
short of 9. Like, he has. I feel like knowing Ovi, he would have to come back to beat
I
900.
was just saying, I'll play 5 minutes a game, put me on
and then he
every
would
power
retire.
play, and I'll just sit there and just take slap shots.
He
One
did
timers.
say-
Eventually, I'll get 6 or 5 or
He
however
did say
many.
if he beats it, he would retire, but I feel like he could not pass up on getting to 900.
900.
Like,
Well,
he'd have
my
to. He'd be
OCC
so
would
close.
really applaud him not
A
retiring.
40-year-old Ovi could score 5 goals in a season.
So, and the thing is, I don't care if he hits like 903. It's like, at least you hit 900. That's all I care about. You hit 900,
and then that's it, and retire. Then you're good to go. I mean, only 2
I don't
guys.
care. I don't care where you are at that point. It's just as long as you
Yeah.
hit that.
I mean, he will at least finish second. Like, there's no way I think he doesn't catch Gordie Howe unless he gets injured, because Gordie Howe's at 801. Like, he just has to get 109 goals.
2 more, two 40 goal seasons on top of what he did this year.
Yeah, think of what
Yeah.
he adds on this year. Like, if Ovi in 2 seasons, Ovi could get 109 goals after this year. Like, if he finishes with the 15 this year, Ovi just has to have 2 45-goal seasons or 46-goal seasons back to back, and he would pass Gordie Howe. Like, that's likely going to happen. If he doesn't do it in 2 seasons, he'll do it in 3 seasons. I think all it comes down to for Ovi is health at this point. He's getting older. He's got to stay healthy.
Slowing down at all, though, dude.
No, just can't
Dude's
have
getting hit in
long-term
the face
injuries.
with the stick. He's knocking out Svechnikov with rights, and then he's just pounding goals in the net every time. Dude's a maniac. I love him.
We all hope he does it. Another question from Shredden. He said, "Who's your favorite underrated former Duck from the last decade?" He said his is Daniel Winnick.
Yeah, I could see that. I was like, let's see, underrated. So, I mean, are we going like fourth liners or just like
Underrated. I mean, one
in
guy
the last decade? He said.
Yeah, like one guy wanted to say, but it's not really the last decade. It was Andy McDonald. So I feel like
I
he
was gonna
wasn't
say
given
that
enough
too.
credit,
Yeah,
like
I
for
was
what
gonna say that.
he did. But if it's in the last decade, that's tough. Like I trying to think. Daniel Winnick's a good pick, honestly. Like Winnick was good when he was here, and he was a valuable piece for what the Ducks were putting together.
Yeah, I would say that. I'd also say he didn't spend enough time here, but Chris Wagner, I always liked his style, but I don't think he did enough with the Ducks or wasn't here long enough for the Ducks.
I wanted to say Paul Mary, but that's just based off what he's done with New Jersey, not what he did with the Ducks. Like that wouldn't be fair to kind of put him in that category, I think.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, because I mean, at that point, we're talking about third and fourth line guys, so I'd really have to think about it a little bit more. But yeah,
It's a tough question. Like, it honestly is a tough question because the
you
first name
have
that
to
came
think
to
about
mind was Andy McDonald. Like, that was the first
Mine
name
too,
that came to my mind.
One that
And like even other guys, like maybe Cogs, maybe, but like people.
that was the
love
other thing I was
Cogs,
thinking too. But like he was like second line shutdown. He wasn't really like unsung. It's like everyone kind of knew what he did. He just he didn't really put up goals or anything, but he had his own little thing. So that's what I think is like a third or fourth line guy. And I was like, I'm trying to think of a third or fourth line guy last decade that was amazing. And then like defensively,
but Penner was even before. Like,
before. Yeah, then I would say
Bobby
Dupre.
Ryan,
I would say
really
Dupre, but then
you can say Bobby Ryan. Like, I feel like 4 back-to-back or 4 straight 30-goal seasons. Like, but he wasn't underrated when he was here. It's just now because he's kind of fallen off a cliff with Ottawa that you don't really think of it.
That's a toughie. I don't know. I'll think about it. Tell him we'll get back to him.
Well, we should definitely do some more research and have that. But if it's all time, it's Andy McDonald for me. That's
no, that's what I was thinking too. So
Okay, well, this was I thought we had another question, but it's literally some guy called the Turf Guy, and he said, "If your yard isn't turf, you need to check out our page today." That's
Well, what about Dave? Dave had one on Twitter.
yeah, there was some on Twitter, but I was just reading through Instagram. So
Yeah.
that was a free ad read for the Turf Guy. So
Oh, good.
you're welcome.
Hmm.
All right, on Twitter, Dave's no, that's not one. He said, "How many fingers am I holding up?"
That was the second one.
His second one, though, is even with how well Terry and Comtois have been playing in San Diego, do you think the Ducks should keep them down there and let them thrive / gain even more confidence? Have you seen the types of goals San Diego has been scoring, shots / plays between the dots and in the house? Ducks don't do this. That last part I 100% agree with. The Ducks, and there was data to back this up at the beginning of the season. We had mentioned on the podcast that the Ducks just don't attempt passes into the slot or into prime scoring areas, and they just don't get any slot shots at all. I'd be interested to see if that's gone up. That's not really a stat that's kind of publicly available, but I mean, if San Diego's doing that, that's great. I mean, and obviously they have the personnel down there to do it. To answer the first question, I think at least Comtois, maybe Troy Terry, but I would like to see him back up at some point. But for at least for now, there's no harm in having them down there in San Diego.
Yeah, the next week or two or whatever.
Yeah, playing big minutes, first line minutes, top power play unit down in San Diego, and actually putting up points and scoring goals and playing well. Like there's nothing wrong with overproducing guys or overdeveloping guys in the AHL and having them have that time, especially a guy like Comtois who's just in the midst of his first NHL season. That's generally a guy that you see bounce back and forth between the AHL, and even Troy Terry is not even hit 100 games yet. That's a guy that, again, you don't expect him to break out right away in the NHL, and if he's dominating the AHL, he's kind of right on the cusp of making that transition full time to the NHL. So there's nothing wrong personally, I think, right now with keeping them down there, letting them play well. But Troy Terry is one guy.
He'll be back up.
Yeah, I would like to at least see him at some point this year again to see if that can kind of transition to the NHL, because we've seen him do this before in the AHL.
Yeah.
So you kind of know maybe he's not too good for it, but he's at least one of the better players down there, and he almost has nothing to gain from staying down there long term if he's just gonna dominate down there. We've seen that with Daniel Sprong in the past. Like what more does he have to prove in the AHL? It's just about proving yourself in the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Terry will be up at some point, but the rest of the guys will probably end up staying there. Like Terry's kind of that guy that we're waiting for him to get back from injury is essentially why he's down there and tearing it up as he is. He could be doing us a little bit of a favor too, and might as well get more NHL experience.
I think he's got 9 points in 5 games, 2 goals and 7 assists.
It's just too good. I mean.
He's obviously too good for it.
He doesn't want to stay there. It's not like I was like, oh, I'm doing great. I'm scoring a lot of goals in the AHL. Don't call me up. He wants to be in the NHL.
Yeah, and that's if you're down there, he's doing everything right. You go down there as much as you don't want to be down there. You go down there and you show that you don't belong there, and you show that you belong in the NHL, and you just play your way back up there, and that's what you want him to do when he gets sent back down, is to show that he's too good for that league and he can dominate that league, and that he needs to be getting more time in the NHL. And now it's just on him that when he gets that call up to show he can, obviously not dominate at the NHL level, but show at least he belongs, to start putting up points with the Ducks as well. Last question we had on Facebook, and maybe not Facebook, on Twitter. The last question we maybe have in general is from Alec. He said, if you're the GM, which pieces are you okay with trading for picks and prospects? So if you're trading players off the Ducks roster, who are you okay trading?
Yeah, we kind of talked about that a little bit. Like, I'm completely okay with trading Kasha, Gudbranson. I'm all right with. Quite honestly, Larson at this point, because I think Mahura is going to be his replacement for the most part. So I'm willing to move those pieces around. I'm not willing to move a Gibson like some people would say. I'd be okay with Ryan Miller because we could probably get something back, because I doubt he's going to want to stick around another season the way this one went. So, he'd be another one. But, I mean, I'm not in my opinion, I'm not trading a Silfverberg or Raquel. I'm not trading Getzlaf. I'm not doing Fowler, Lindholm, Manson, I might be okay with trading, but it really depends what we're getting. And it'd be tough because if I'm trading a Manson, I want something similar. Like I can't see moving him and then having that vacancy because there's nothing to fill it, and at that point, you're just dooming your team for a while. So
Yeah.
why do it?
I mean, the way I answer this question is probably not maybe the answer he was looking for.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not answering this the right way, but
Okay.
I don't think anybody's ever untouchable. So if the right deal was to come across and you were getting the right picks or the right the right prospect or a certain high level prospect back or package of prospects that make that deal make sense, then I think anybody, honestly, I think if you get the right deal for Cam Fowler and it makes sense for this team and you get all the pieces that are worth what Cam Fowler is worth right now, or same for Silfverberg or Raquel or Kasha. Some of these guys are guys I don't want to give up, but if you got a package where you just can't say no, then you would be okay trading him. I mean, you get a first round pick and a high end prospect and another decent prospect for a player like Josh Manson. Do you say no, or if you get a couple first round picks for Hampus Lindholm, again, you might be on. That's just kind of an example, but if you get a package you can't say no, I would generally be open to trading anybody as long as it was worth it. There's some guys I would be upset, or it'd be a hard what am I trying to say? Like a hard yes on to get rid of them, and John Gibson and Rickard Raquel or Hampus Lindholm. Like these would be guys I wouldn't want to trade, but if you got the right deal, I wouldn't say no.
Yeah, I don't like playing in that fantasy world of, well, if I got if I gave this guy up and I got just a wealth of everything. Well, obviously you'll trade anybody if you're getting a wealth of everything. So
Yeah.
that's like I almost like when someone says, "Oh, would you who would you move?" and for whatever you could get, and I was like, well, no, it's like who as the Ducks organization, who am I willing, who is not going to really help me moving after this season? I'll move that person for something. Yeah, I can move Gibby, but that dude can help me the
Yeah.
rest of the way. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm not looking to get rid of him. So I only deal with the opportunities of people who probably are not going to continue on with me, or I have a strong feeling aren't really going to contribute many seasons past this. And in my opinion, Silverberg, Raquel, Getzlaf, Gibby, although not untouchable, I can't really see moving them because those guys can only help my organization move forward. Now, if it's Kasha or it's a Richie or it's someone else like that, maybe I kind of go like, well, they're not necessarily going to push my thing there. So if I've got a good enough deal, I'm willing to move those people.
Yeah.
So it's like,
I think along those lines, then Larson, I agree with that. I think Branson, the way he's been playing, if you can get something for him, or at least more than what you gave up at this point, and try and get. But I think the problem is trying to get out from that, trying to convince a team to take him for $4.6 million for next year as well. You might have to eat.
That was a rough buy.
You might have to eat, half of that and bite the bullet on that one. But if you can also get some more assets for eating half of that, then maybe it's worth it. And again, one that we disagree on for sure, but I think Jakob Silfverberg is a guy that I would explore because of the age and the length of the contract. And again, where we kind of differ on is when we think the Ducks are going to be competitive again, and how quickly he can be a valuable piece of a competitive team. So he would be a guy I would kind of also look to trade. And we've mentioned Josh Manson a bit, and there's some merit there, but then there's also the fact that he is really the only Ducks right-handed defenseman.
There's such a void if you move him.
Yeah, and it's not like they have anything coming up that eventually could replace him. If they had, a decent right-handed shot defenseman who has a chance to be a top 4 defenseman in this league in the pipeline, then you have maybe more of a willingness to trade him. Or if you can get something like that in return for Josh Manson, maybe that trade becomes a little bit more appealing. But I think if you trade Josh Manson, you have to at least get another either NHL ready or almost NHL ready right shot defenseman in return that can kind of play right now and maybe not be as good, but be close to as good or better down the road. So those are kind of the guys I think possibly could be moved, or the Ducks should explore being moved. In terms of what's upcoming, obviously the Ducks are on their break right now. Next game is Monday, January 27th against the San Jose Sharks, and then after that is Wednesday, January 29th against the Arizona Coyotes. We have, I think, a show planned. This type show, the regular podcast, is I think for January 30th. Planning on hopefully having some show get released during the break, so we're not gone. So we're not gone for 11 days with no show. So hopefully something to break up that mix in the next 5 or 6 days from now, and whether it's an interview or just kind of an update show or something like that. If there's any news, we're hoping to do that. And then you also have the watch party.
Watch party
on February 1st, right? So why don't you tell them a bit more about that? Because
yeah, so it'll be a watch party over at I think it's Peps or Pepperonis or however they call it. It's a franchise, but there's one in Anaheim Hills that's off of Santa Ana Canyon, and it is going to be for February 1st. We are going to get our own section to the side, but we're also getting happy hour pricing, so it's going to be cheaper. But they have an awesome beer selection. So if you like beer, it's amazing. They got pizza. It's great. Been there a few times. Talked to the owner well before we even tried to do any of this stuff. But it's going to be Saturday, February 1st. The game starts at 7:30. Me and Pat will probably be there about 7 or so. So if you want to come early, hang out, meet up, it's awesome. We'll even probably have a few different little Kings fans that are longtime friends of ours. But all good people, and it should be a good time. And no trains. No trains for Eddie. So, but it'll be a good time, and even though the seasons aren't going so great for either of the teams, it'll just be nice to just have a beer, have a pizza, watch a hockey game, a little rivalry game. So it should be a good time.
Yeah, maybe it won't be the battle for Lafreniere anymore if the Ducks keep winning games. I mean, they're slowly moving out of the bottom. The Kings are anchored in the bottom of the Western Conference right now. The Ducks went from being the second worst team in the league to the fifth worst team in the league with 2 back-to-back wins. So there's good and bad with that, but hopefully when we're back after the San Jose and Arizona game, we have some at least some good things to talk about, whether the Ducks win or lose those games, and those will be have some big implications, at least on the Pacific Division standings in terms of teams at the bottom and even Arizona teams at the top with that. So we'll be back. I believe Pat will also be back on that show, but it's a little bit kind of far out to tell who will be on that, but we're hoping so. He was out at hockey tonight, so he couldn't join the show. And then for anybody who is a member of our Patreon, we do have 2 episodes coming out soon. We have a rant show we're recording in the next couple days here, and then we have a Pucks and Brews that is getting recorded later on in the month. So if you're a Patreon, look forward for that. If not, check out patreon.com/PuckGuysForeverMighty to kind of get all the details and see what type of bonus episodes we're pumping out. But that is it for the show, and we will see you guys in about 11 days, unless we release a little bit of a bonus show by then. All right, guys. Take care.
I guess.